for many employees, it's just a job at the end of the day where they get paid for doing something. So when you're asking them to think, to assist the business, then that's really taking some of them out of their comfort zone.
And I say innovation in terms of a mindset shift. Instead of going to a bank and saying, what can you do for me? You gather a few of the similar companies and you go to the bank and say, this is how our industry works and this is where we need help.
I want to do all of these amazing things. Like, I can't get the resources, and I've tried genuinely, and like I'm pushing. I'm at my wit's end. No scripted introductions, but firms like yours are shrouded in a lot of mystery, and so I think it's best if we start off with an introduction about your firm, what you do, what every day looks like, so that we demystify firms like yours a bit.
Right. Thank you very much. In terms of Sarpong Capital is an investment banking firm that focuses on corporate advisory and also securities trading. Now, corporate advisory, what we mean there is we advise companies across financial decision making and also some strategic activities around ownership, raising capital, establishing what the optimum value of the business is, as well as other questions that maybe a board or shareholders may ask for our insights on. And that's the broad area in terms of corporate advisory. And securities trading, what we focus on is helping clients access markets. Accessing various markets. Now, what we mean by markets, a market is where something can be bought or sold. So in this case, we're talking bonds, we're talking equities, we're talking commodities, we're talking foreign exchange, derivatives. Those are the markets that we provide access to. Yeah.
Interesting. I'd like to hear from yourself also, because what you do, research, it's quite influential in your space. And I think with the business that we pay attention to, that's something it's only one person in the business that does that. So could you give us an overview of what type of research is of interest to you guys, and some of the things that you look at to study in order to do what your firm does?
Okay, so the research unit is tasked with providing, timely analysis on happenings in the macroeconomic space, in the equity space, or the debt markets, for internal decision making and for our clients' use within the country and in global markets. Our focus currently, we focus on the wider international environment, and then we bring it home into the sub-Saharan African market. So we have periodic updates, we have annual reports, and we also provide forecasts for investors' use.
Okay, so if I picked a typical research report from your firm, what would that look like? What are the things I should expect to learn from it? Because the firms that we pay attention to, not enough time to be reading these. They want to get into the deep end of things. So what are the things, my expectations when I pick up reports from you, and what am I walking away with that I can use in my business?
Of general focus, we do a top-down approach, a macro to a micro approach. So we start from the global environment, we bring it into the country space, and then we take it into industry and then how it affects individual businesses.
Based on the top-down approach that you use, it's only right we start from a global perspective, right? From the two of you, I don't know which one would go first. Could you give us an overview of the global business atmosphere? The global business atmosphere. So what is it like now? Because for most small to medium-sized companies, it's pretty much what they hear in the news that informs their judgment, and not many people will get the chance to glean across several channels to have a balanced view. One channel, what they hear, that's that. So what's the global business atmosphere looking like in general?
So I think the overarching narrative globally is because there's been just relentless headwinds We went through COVID, and then there was the Russia-Ukraine war. There's tensions within US and China. The global perspective is constrained growth in the near term. That's the narrative. So businesses are just trying to stay afloat. Now, of course, there are peculiarities depending on the individual country. So, for instance, in Nigeria, in addition to the headwinds, there's also the political space. In Ghana, in addition to the headwinds, there's also the IMF and debt situation. So there are peculiarities for each of the countries, but their overarching narrative is businesses are typically just trying to stay afloat despite everything that they faced over the last 3 to 4 years.
Okay, so is it gloomy for everyone, or it's better for some others? Is it, say, bad for sub-Saharan Africa and it's better in other markets, say the West, or in the Asian markets it's different? I mean, from you guys pay a lot of attention to the global scene, so is it better or is bad everywhere?
Inflation is at an all-time high across the entire global space. When I say global, I'm talking the Western world and even in sub-Saharan Africa and even in Asia. Inflation is generally higher than expected, so that affects everybody's pockets, and therefore it's not an easy time for everyone. Now, when you come to sub-Saharan Africa in particular, the challenge is that we are more import oriented. Many of our economies are very import dependent, and therefore, when you are dependent as much on imports than you are producing and exporting out, you typically are importing other countries' inflation into your economy. So that's a double whammy for sub-Saharan African countries as well. So I guess across the world, everybody is suffering, but probably sub-Saharan Africa might be taking the hit more.
Okay. Many people, when they hear this on the news, they think it's political rhetoric. So hearing this from you, I think it's quite refreshing. So, which are the main things that matter now on a global perspective, right? So I want to pay attention to some indicators on the global scene. Which ones am I spending more time? Is it a Russian-Ukraine war, China, US, tensions that's easing now? Is there anything I should pay particular attention to? I should just stick to the news and what Bloomberg is telling me.
So it depends on what areas you're looking at in terms of or what regions you're looking at. There are a few key pillars. First of all, political risk of whatever region you're looking at. If you're safe there or if there's nothing there, then you take that and you move on to the next one. The next one, credit risk. Look at the country environment or debt sustainability, credit ratings, and the little nuances of lending in that space. And then you move on to things like regulatory environment. And so there are key pillars that you can use to assess whatever region that one is looking at. And then you dovetail into the macroeconomic indicators such as inflation, exchange rates, and things like that.
I know someone that's probably thinking, okay, I hear what you're saying, I'm concerned, I want to find out. Aside from the news, where am I really going to get this? If I do find the time, is there one source I can just jump in and get all the things, the things you've mentioned? Is there one source I can go to for this information, or is there a range of sources, or I should completely rely on Bloomberg or what's there? They just Google it. How are businesses, key decision makers supposed to approach getting relevant information on this? I think the report that you guys published is one of them, but independent of that, are there any other sources that you think is a good place to go looking out for these information on this?
So, for instance, I always lean towards primary sources of data, getting a contact in whatever region. The primary sources of data the government releases. Sometimes those can be a bit dated, but I would also say this, and it is a service that we offer. We can handhold anybody looking to go into a certain market. So, aside the reports that we disseminate into the general public, we're able to sit down with people and find out what it is they're looking for and provide that information for them. So it's always interesting or good to have eyes and ears on the ground, find somebody like ourselves to handhold.
Okay. Businesses that are not heavily operating in international markets and do not have a dedicated R&D department, your typical, medium-sized company operating in Ghana and perhaps one other African country, does these things concern them? Should they even bother about it?
I think they should bother about all of that information. Like I said, sub-Saharan Africa typically imports as opposed to exporting. So where are your imports coming from? So if there's a trade spat between the U.S. and China, of course that has broad impacts on an importing country, especially if you're importing from more from China. There are issues to deal with, and you have to be aware of what's going on, the trade wars and all of those things. Does it mean America is going to try and get some quotas up on China to prevent them from doing certain things, and how does that affect you? What is the country, for a country like Ghana, what is our trade relationship with the United States like? What's our trade relationship with the Chinese like? Those are all questions that you've got to ask, because invariably when two elephants are fighting, it's the grass that suffers. And therefore you want to make sure you know what's going on across the pool. Yeah.
Right. Are there any African economies that you would say are good examples at the moment for, say, Ghanaians businesses to look at? Is there any African? You hear Rwanda being cited often. I think South Africa has been in the news lately because of the concerns with BRICS, but because of how medium-sized companies complain about how bad things are, how the business atmosphere is horrible for them, is there any economy in sub-Saharan Africa where we can look at and say, right, even though it's bad, but this is what the businesses there are doing that we in Ghana can learn from? Or it's so gloomy for everyone that, everywhere you look, it's just complaints, complaints, complaints. So just muddle through.
Right. Well, in terms of other markets, what I would say is this. West Africa, for example, is an interesting place where you have about a number of countries here that are not divided by land, but divided rather by language. That is the biggest challenge. There are opportunities that sit in the Francophone market, for example. Now, just because we have a language barrier, that means a lot of SMEs here who could have been operating in those markets are being prevented from going there just because of language. But once you can surmount language as a barrier, I think there is sufficient room to look at the Francophone market. That it's a big market. They have a single currency that they use in that market, which means that trade can flow across borders in that space very easily. So it's a matter of looking at the Francophone market, and you've got a big market opportunity there. Yeah.
Recently, I heard something in the news by the former CEO of Stanbic, I think Al-Hassan and Dani, and what his argument was that if businesses are operating in Ghana and they are struggling and it's difficult here, then just move into another international market. Right. So from what you're telling me, it seems to me it lends credence to what he was saying. If it's tough in Ghana, just hop into another country.
As a country in Ghana, you do, let's say you have a 30 million population, and then overall, but then maybe you've got your real market is concentrated around probably 2 or 3 million people. Then when you go into the Francophone market, for example, that's, you pick each country, multiply that through, and that's a potential market for you to access. From a currency point of view, you don't have a challenge in there. Historically, being able to do trade across the country, across borders, has been challenging just because of the different currencies that have existed: CD, Naira, CFA. How do you get payments across? So I think with the introduction of the Pan-African Payment Settlement System, PAPS, yes, that's a game changer, where once you can source clientele outside of your borders, then you receiving a payment from them is no longer an issue. So I guess from a more supply chain point of view, what we've got to figure out is how do we get our logistics in order to move goods across the border in an efficient manner to get them to the customers.
You mentioned PAPS, and I'll drill down a bit on that. But before PAPS, wouldn't the cryptocurrency craze wouldn't it have made cross-border trading easier?
Well, in an ideal world, possibly. I can't say for sure. But because different regulatory regimes exist across
Right.
board, in Ghana, you'd find it difficult to actually do a cryptocurrency directly or legitimately because of regulations that prevent it from being made use of. In other markets, might be the same, or there may be no regulations there. So really, the patchwork of regulations across the board makes it difficult to rely on cryptocurrency as a solution for payments, and that is a challenge.
The conspiracy theorists would say the central banks don't want to protect their power, which is why, but I don't know whether I can draw you into commenting on that. That's hence why they are not, in favor of the cryptos.
I'm not a believer in conspiracy theories. What I do believe in is everything has its role. The central bank has its role in the economy. Currency also has its role in the economy, and any asset class that is trying to become a currency also has its role to play. It's just a matter of what is the timing of when that role becomes useful for it to dominate. We don't know yet, so I don't think there's any conspiracy theory there that the central banks want to lose power. It's more of everything has its role.
Perhaps African Free Trade Continental Agreement. The two put together, it seems all of Africa's problems have been solved. Perhaps, and the AFTA would help with intra-continental trade, and the notion that if you're struggling in your home country, move on to another African country. So put all of these elements together. Would you say the future looks bright for our local businesses?
The future looks bright if we can get a few things right.
And this is not naive optimism.
Not at all. One, corporate governance is an issue across board in SME space in Ghana, for example, and then scale. You want to go and operate in a different country, but have you built sufficient scale locally and capacity to actually do that? That's another issue. Because when you look at our SMEs, they really focus more on the local market and the domestic demand. And therefore, it becomes a challenge scaling up because even access to finance is challenging, which is one of the key themes that prevents us from moving out of the country. And when you look at Ghana especially, not a lot of companies are actually done very well going out of Ghana. And therein lies a big indicator of what it's going to look like going forward.
At EDIP, our vision is to transform Africa one small business at a time. It's not just a utopian vision. That's something we genuinely believe in. And we make the case that we want to help local SMEs become internationally and globally competitive. Every time I say that to a CEO of a small to medium-sized company, the first thing they tell me is this: I want to do that. The economy is killing me. Could you paint a picture, a macroeconomic picture of Ghana for me to help us reorient us? Okay, where is Ghana at now, business? Right? We looked at the global stage, but Ghana particularly, where are we at now with what the Ghana Statistical Service put out recently that we've done better in Q1 comparative to where we were last year? Overall, where are we at on a macro scale? What's the outlook like? Because all the people I've spoken to about what's the outlook looks like, they tell me, right, the statistics, the macro indicators are one thing, our pocket is another.
Yeah, so we started off the year, and we have a report to that effect, the waiting game, waiting to see what form the IMF deal was going to take and when the payments were going to come in or the monies were going to come in to alleviate some of the challenges that were being faced. But I think we have now moved into cautious optimism territory, even off the back of the recently released Q1 GDP figures, which are relatively encouraging, even though they were steered by the services segment. Now, taking that picture, what do we need in Ghana? We need liquidity, right? We need to attract a bit more capital. We need to produce more. Looking at other markets, especially around here in the context of the Africa Free Trade Agreement, we're able to do that now. Earlier on this week, the Afrexim Bank, in collaboration with some partners, launched the ATG, I think it is, the Africa Trade Gateway, which encompasses not only the PAPs, but also a platform for due diligence. It's called Mansa. The due diligence platform so enables people to onboard both on the buying and the selling side, and are able to execute trades. Now, what we do by opening ourselves up to a wider market in the region is we ultimately would attract more liquidity to the country. So definitely, it's one to explore. I think yes, we're suffering at the moment, or things are not going as great as they should be, but it is definitely worth a while to look into other markets and see how to attract liquidity from revenue, from production, buying and selling.
What I am understanding from all of this, on the balance of affairs, you reckon that Ghana is doing relatively better, like in terms of the general outlook.
I think we go through these cycles now and again. We are in a peculiar situation now. Obviously, it's been rinsed. I'm not going to go through all the numbers and the debt scenarios at the moment. But yes, it is in a tricky situation. It's also a small, limited market. So why restrict oneself to, especially if you're in the so where people are making money these days, FMCGs, you have to follow the money, follow the use. Where are people buying stuff? What sort of products are people buying? If you're following that, it's a limited market. If you expand your horizon into Benin Republic, into Nigeria, into Niger, into Mali, why not?
Why not? Hmm. You know, sometimes I think those of us that have these insights, whether we know so much that we are too optimistic, or we know so much it's removed us from the realities. Because the businesses that I speak to, they will tell me, okay, regardless what the Ghana Statistical Services say, regardless of all that we hear about the macroeconomic indicators, business on the ground is hard, is torment. We are dying, we can't survive. So what is it that is happening on the macro level that is constraining affairs on the ground? I don't know. Could you comment on that? What could it be that is making businesses just they feel strangled?
Well, it is their reality. You can't take that away from them. But what we need to do is not sort of wallow in our the current situations and try and be innovative. Innovation is the word. And when I say innovation, I don't mean just in designing of product, but I mean in terms of marketing, in terms of sensitizing the credit decision makers in banks and financial institutions so that they understand the industry better and are better able to lend in the case of no collateral, for instance, or insufficient collateral for lending. So innovation is key, and continue to drive the conversations amongst peers, the industry, unions, and the financial institutions, which are very instrumental.
So indirectly, you're saying they should innovate. They should invest in innovating and putting more, improving their value proposition on the market.
But not necessarily forking out Ghana CDs or cash for innovation. Innovation in thinking, in approach. We always have this strategy approach which starts off with what winning means. So what does winning mean to the establishment? And then you dovetail what winning means. What do you need to win? Where do you need to play to win? And what are the resources or the other stakeholders you need to engage to win?
You've taken me into strategic management, and I love that because it is my turf. It's home soil. Before we delve into the strategic aspect of where are we going, what winning means, what are we going to be playing in, I just want to get this clear. Like, so should SMEs invest more or not financially?
In what?
In innovation, for instance. So right now, okay, this is the state of affairs. This is what we are in now. This is the reality we live in now, right? The money we have sitting at the bank, should we put it in the business and try and become more innovative, try and scale or expand? Should we pretty much pump more money into the business to try and, grow or scale, or we should just.
I was going to clarify what I meant by innovation. So I would give an example.
Right.
Instead of going to a bank, and I say innovation in terms of a mindset shift. So instead of going to a bank and saying, "What can you do for me?" You gather a few of the similar companies and you go to the bank and say, "This is how our industry works, and this is where we need help." So it's a mindset shift, and both sides of the table have to meet each other in an elevated manner.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I mean by innovation. So it's not so much just Ghana cities being forked over or pumped into innovation.
Innovation is not always just about R&D and product development. Innovation can even be your corporate governance. You might as well money spent on building a strong corporate governance framework or environment is as good as money being spent on a product itself, because you're able to then attract strategic thinking. You're able to attract experience to your boards, okay? And invariably that positions you to be more innovative, or even innovative to begin with, than you were before. So if you look at a lot of the SMEs in Ghana, 2-man boards, owner and wife, that's the structure.
And children.
Okay, and children. If they're not, they've not been in a particular business for a very long time and they're just starting out in a business, where is the innovation coming from? It's just them. Where is the thinking coming from? It's just them. So the more SMEs invest in attracting outside talent into the business, they are positioning themselves to be innovative in thought and innovative in product as well.
Right. I think maybe that's a mistake I made. Whenever we hear innovation, we have this implicit assumption that it's innovation in products and services. But what I am hearing probably is maybe economic innovation, like new ways of doing things that it brings more value to how you're operating. And I guess we have to spend some time on the strategic aspects of matters, because you've referenced corporate governance and strategizing. How do you reckon, against the backdrop of all these knowledge of the macro environment, how do you reckon SMEs approach strategy formulation and how they implement it?
So typically, most SMEs, if they don't have in-house talent, will look to bring in consultants to assist with that. But I think the key is starting to think, or asking certain questions and finding the answers to those questions. Once you're able to set the questions and then embark on a process of answering the questions, once you've got the answers you're looking for, or a range of answers, you can then set off on implementing and then executing the outcome of that process. So you've got to follow a more structured process to decision making and also to thinking.
Right. So pretty much SME should rather look within for the solutions and try and.
Of course. I mean, looking within, sometimes you'd be surprised at where solutions come from. And one of my case studies back when I was much younger was looking for how to reduce costs and create shareholder value. The company spent God knows how much on consultants, when the solution was actually on the packing line, because somebody there had been doing the job for so long, they knew where all the kinks and challenges were. They were making matches, right? Matchboxes, and putting the matches, the sticks into the box. They spent millions trying to innovate how to improve costs and everything. Somebody on the production line said, "Oh, the two, on a matchbox, you've got two sides where you scratch and then it lights up the match. Why don't you just take one side off?" Okay. And leave only one side. You save so much in cost. And true to that, just by taking that one side off, they save more than they had spent on consultants.
But most of the businesses would say that, right, we are trying our best. And from my position as a consultant, sometimes I actually have to turn down some of these clients. I'm like, listen, you're not consultant ready. right? Paying me more will benefit you less, right? But then again, from what you're telling me, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, they've been doing it for years.
Those on the production, before you hire a consultant, ask the production floor, how do we cut costs in this process? You'll be surprised what they tell you.
Employee engagement
Yeah.
is incredibly key.
Engaging the employees and seeing what they come. So what if you've tried that, it's not working? I know some businesses that they'll say, listen, I'm the most competent person in this business. When I go and ask them, "Oh, boss, it's up to you, whatever you say."
Those employees are typically not motivated. They're not thinking about the business the way they ought to. They don't feel as if they are owners. So for many employees, it's just a job at the end of the day where they get paid for doing something. So when you're asking them to think, to assist the business, then that's really taking some of them out of their comfort zone. But you find that properly engaged and properly motivated employees will be more than willing to suggest ways of improving the business. That's where the word Kaizen comes from. I mean, Toyota's model word is Kaizen, continuous improvement, where they don't want to bog down in bureaucratic approaches to solving problems. You find a problem there and you have the power, or you have the ability to fix it, and then report the results to us. Then it gets part of the company culture at that point in time.
And then once employees feel that they have a say and they're part of the business, you automatically see transformation in terms of how well they do, because they feel like a stakeholder then.
I'm finding it quite challenging to believe that, because I'm involved with several small businesses, and what they say, what the employees, from my perspective, what employees bring out is not always as valuable, right? It's like what the examples you cited to me are anomalies. It's like rare occurrences every now and then, but day to day, they want to involve their staff. They don't really care as much. They just want to make a quick buck. They're just waiting for payday. What's this talk about? I should find solutions. No. So I don't know. I'm finding it tough to.
I mean,
They recruited the wrong people in the business.
I was getting to that actually. Talent selection, it's a very key activity for any business, be it small and medium or the large external corporates. Talent selection is a very important activity. So when you get that wrong, you've set yourself up for either mediocre activities going on within, or mediocre performance within the business, or high-flying performance in the business if you get it right. So I think talent selection and talent acquisition is a very important activity.
Strategy formulation, be innovative about it, and you could create more value, involve your employees more, engage them more, and you can find hidden solutions in the business. The talent acquisition point that you make in Ghana, finding the right talent. I don't know about other African countries, but in Ghana, I've been interviewing for SMEs. I've been on interviewing panels, and mostly if we interview 100 people, I'm turning down 80 of them. And the remaining 20, when you recruit them, you find out that they were just very good actors and actresses. So what you're telling me, I don't know what the industry is like for you guys, but for me, I'm speaking for myself and for the SMEs. Like, the people out there are no good enough. Sorry to say, but it's like the talent is not good enough. They will say the universities are not churning up amazing talent, and when you recruit them, they are not employment ready. I don't know, where do we find these amazing people that can?
I think I would disagree with the notion that the talent is not good enough. I think the universities are doing the best that they can within the constraint that they or the environment that they're operating in. But where I think a lot of the universities are probably struggling is linking their academic work to industry, such that when their products come out, they're more employable, or their skill set matches what industry is looking for. So I think more engagement between academia and industry will get talent to a certain level that we're expecting. But that being said, I think speaking from my own experience, when you set a vision and you articulate that vision, when you're selecting talent, you've got to communicate that vision to the talent. If they buy into it, they know what they're in for and what level of performance that they're going to be expected to perform at. If you're not sharing the vision when you're employing or you're hiring, then that means there's already a communication gap between, or what we call back in the day, what we call the expectations gap is created from day one, where what I think you are bringing to the table is different from what you're actually going to bring, and what you think you are coming to take from the table is different from what I'm going to give you. Once an expectations gap is created, then you've got a problem. So I think during the hiring and talent acquisition process, we've got to look at how we communicate the firm's vision or the SME's vision, where they are, where they want to be in the next 5-10 years, how they are thinking in terms of mindset. All of that needs to be communicated during the hiring process to tease out the best talent. You did say you find out that the 20 are pretty good actors and actresses. If they were that good, the Ghana acting industry would be, the film industry would be very good. But that being said, once there's a vision being communicated, you would find very quickly that those 20 people fit in very well and they're able to perform at a very high level, so long as the resources are also given to them. It's one thing to bring talented and motivated people into a business, but when you don't resource them and empower them, resourcing without empowering is a pretty dangerous game, because you get to that situation where people will say to you, boss, whatever you say. Yes, boss, whatever you say is just a symptom of no empowerment.
The questions flying through my mind is so many of them. The businesses, I'm speaking for them. I know someone that's going to say, listen, all right, I hear everything you're saying. I know it today, but I didn't know this 3 years back. I have 57 staff. These are the people I'm stuck with. Well, my strategy, I knew it, but when I tell them, they don't even care about it. Or they just, is this the paycheck? And most of them keep coming to me telling me they want to move out of Ghana. Can I help them? Right. So this is where I'm at. How do I transition into this amazing organization where employees are engaged, they feel empowered, and they can contribute value? Like, okay, this is where I'm at now. How do I do the transition?
One of my high school tutors once said to you, failing to plan is planning to fail. Right. Yes. I didn't understand it at the time until I progressed in life, and it's true. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So if you want to build an organization, it's not done overnight. It's not that organization, that ideal organization, or that organization where engagement happens throughout. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but you've got to have a plan to get there. So too often you hear Ghanaians saying, oh, this thing is going to take too long. But if you never start it, you're never ever going to get there. So if you keep putting the plan to engage off, when you do put it on in 5 years' time, it'll take you another 5 years to do it. That's 10 years wasted before you get there. When you could have put a plan in today, and 5 years from now, you'll be in that organization that you want to be.
And it's never too late to develop a new appraisal system or an appraisal benefit system, and have open communication with the staff at different levels to update them on the changing HR policies or appraisals, KPIs. It's never too late. And like you said, if you keep delaying the start, it's going to take a lot longer to get there.
You mentioned earlier, I think, credit risk, right? And you spoke about some indicators. So the right strategy is one thing. The resources, making them available to implement, is also another. I find resource accumulation and the resource constraints to be one of the most pertinent concerns of these SMEs. I want to do all of these amazing things. Like, I can't get the resources, and I've tried genuinely, and like I'm pushing. I'm at my wit's end. So how do you suggest in this current climate SMEs get around the resource, acquisition, resource problem? Like, how do you get the resources?
Sometimes it's as simple as resource allocation. Sometimes these firms really need to go critically look at their balance sheets and see what are producing assets for them. And
Assuming they do it.
assuming they know what to balance, so their assets and their liabilities, and just critically looking at how to restructure them, and also their profit and loss statements, where critically examine their operating expenses and looking at certain things and seeing whether things can be deferred or resources can be reallocated in the interim to make room for such initiatives.
And it's interesting you mentioned balance sheet, and you said if they know what a balance sheet is. So I think one of the first things you want to do in terms of resource allocation is to allocate some resources to professionals, hiring professionals to tell you various things or to explain various things to you. Professionals in finance or financial reporting to help you with your numbers. Professional legal advisors to help you with legal aspects of things. Ghanaian businesses through the experience I've had, do not see the value of professionals because the professional value is seemingly intangible. And therefore, once they cannot touch the product or an output, they rarely see its relevance. But professionals are where you want to be. It's dependent on the professionals that you have. Your employees, you think you've just hired someone, but they are invariably going to become a professional in whatever it is they are doing. So you are also building professionals within. So why not look at professionals outside and seek their opinion and assistance in building your business?
I'll speak here as an entrepreneur. I want to bring in professionals. I can't afford them. They're just too expensive.
There are various ways
That's
of...
a general notion,
Yes,
but there are various
there are
ways of
ways
going
of
about
paying.
Let me
this.
give an example. Okay, the auditors, when they came around and they said, all right, okay, if we do the auditing stuff for you, I'm there thinking, wait, can I not get my sister who is a professional not to do this for me, probably for free, or someone who understands it enough? Because the amount of money that this guy is asking me for, if I had it, I'll use it in other ways to generate more revenue.
Well, you're very right with that, with regard to that. But the reality of starting a business is that when you want to start a business or you want to finance a business, we've got something called bootstrapping. And bootstrapping is seeking family and friends support to do your business. Nothing prevents you from going to your friend who's a professional accountant and asking for his help. That's his contribution to your business. And that's also some financing that has come into your business that you didn't have to spend money on. So professionals, by all means, seek the professional support. However, it's how you pay for it that varies. And it's not always a matter of forking out cash to make a payment. Sometimes there are some solutions such as, okay, well, you're helping us build a business. Here, why not take a 1% equity stake in our business for helping us do XYZ over time? When the business value increases, we can always do what? Buy it back from you at current market value. And of course, that would then be their contribution, the payout they get from it. So there are various ways of looking at it. It's not always just a matter of taking money out to make a payment.
It's mid-year review is coming up for most SMEs. And before we move on to the topic of strategy, in evaluating what they've done so far for the year and revising what they are going to do for the rest of the year, what are some of the pertinent things you reckon they should concern regarding the strategy formulation and implementation so they can do better? I mean, for those that have not done so well, they can do better in the latter part of the year than the first 6 months.
So we lean towards an interesting theme in-house where we say winning, and you've heard it from Yomi saying winning. Now, what she left out for was winning in challenging times, and that's the full theme. Now, that's your theme. Work with that theme, and then you start asking yourself various questions surrounding the theme. Set a theme. How am I winning in challenging times? What am I doing? What's my how am I accessing finance, access to capital? What's my company's position? What's my strategic position? Those are questions that you ask. Now, when you ask those broad questions, you can now drill down to more granular level and ask more detailed questions, and you start realizing that you're asking yourself about the economy. Is GDP, is this GDP upturn or downturn? Is it transitory, or it's more of a long-term structural issue that we have to deal with? How is our cash flow being impacted? What's demand across my sector, the business that we're doing? How is that evolving? How has that evolved over the last 6 months? How has it evolved over the last year? Based on that, how do we think it's going to evolve going forward? So questions, questions, questions. Keep asking the questions.
You also have to look at your competitors' businesses, whether you like it or not. See how they're faring. Can the market sustain the number of players in the market? Should I really be doing this business in the first instance? Do I need to diversify into something else? So these are critical questions. I just wanted to add to that. They're questions to whatever comes to you. They're wild questions you need to ask oneself. And once you start to answer those questions, you would start to see a skeletal strategy forming.
Do more research, understand the landscape, competitors, see whether the industry can contain all of you, or natural selection is.
Ghanaians we tend to do a lot of herd mentality when it comes to business. And by herd mentality, we saw this with the MTN space to space. And on one stretch on Adenta, you had about 70 of them sat there wondering why. Of course, the space to space business initially supplanted the communication com centers, yes. But then when everybody noticed that, that seemingly was a good business, now everybody went into the same business, and then it killed the space-to-space business very quickly, quicker than it even started. So when you think about it, the herd mentality approach never really works, and that's what drives a lot of Ghanaians. Oh, today cement is the big thing, so we're all doing cement. Oh, tomorrow is iron rods, we're all doing iron rods. Now, when we get in there, we fail to do a bit of analysis. Is the iron rod market, is it sustainable with the number of players in here? We the retailers, there are too many retailers. How are we differentiating ourselves? How are we competing? Of course, you've got to know what your competitors are doing, but you've also got to ask yourself, do I even need to be in this business? Maybe I need to transition to a different side. Do I want to go up the value chain, or I want to go further down the value chain? Where I'm positioned, can I leave that side of the value chain, and then transition the entire business to up or down that value chain? Or can I integrate all three levels of the value chain? These are key questions that you start asking.
Winning in challenging times. Winning in challenging times. I'm hearing
That's actually our budget theme for 2023.
Oh, okay. Wherever I say it, I'll quote you on it.